Hi, everyone. We're very excited to support you in the strategic planning process with this next stage of action planning. My husband, my colleague, Eliyahu, and I are going to be working with you on creating this action plan. So in the interview that you already signed up for, the purpose of that interview is for us to gather information on how your job works, right? We're going to be doing data gathering on what is going on in your department and explain the action planning process to you. This particular video explains a leadership model called PAEI that we apply in a number of situations, including in action planning. It's a simple framework that will help explain each of the steps in creating and implementing the action plan. And Eliyahu is going to explain that to you. So Eliyahu, take it away.
Thank you, Shira. So when we go from a strategic plan to an action plan, which is what we're creating now, it's the phase we're in now, to performing the actions, to getting the results, we're talking about a time period that's not days or weeks. Overall, completing a strategic plan can take years. So during that time, things change within the organization, things change outside of PHF, right? So how can you keep it all on track? PAEI is a framework to organize variables. We'll get into it more. You don't have to like memorize this thing. You know, this is a first go round in the concept of PAEI and how to apply it. We'll, of course, be talking with you soon, real soon. And as we work with you ongoingly in the action planning and in the beginning of the implementation, we'll be reinforcing it. But it does create a single language that people from different departments, different units, different hierarchical levels in the organization can use to come together in the action planning and make it as smooth and efficient as possible. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. We got a PowerPoint coming up. The Adizes PAEI model. It is for multiple levels and multiple dimensions in an organization. It's for structures, by which I mean responsibility and accountability, and are they meshed together, and are rewards brought into that, actual organizational departments. We're not going to do we're not here to do restructuring, so don't get worried. We're going to focus on processes and how to get from A to B and all the steps in the middle, and people. So that's why you see work styles on the screen, because it's managerial style, it's leadership style, it's action style, it's just people style. So processes and people. Now, like I said, PAEI shows different characteristics that operate together as a whole, because different people have different characteristics, different processes have different characteristics, different tasks have different characteristics. And we're going to use this model to help us in making and help you in making wise decisions. So just so that you know that we didn't invent this. There is a lot of research behind this that's been done in the field. So it all comes from Dr. Itzhak Adizes, who I met in 1988 and was wowed by his stuff. I was in my 20s and tried to go into organizational transformation and saw that the concepts were also useful in this other love of mine, social work. So I went into social work for years. And now I have moved back into organizational work, organizational development. And so here you have in front of you just some of his cred, and it's a lot. He went from teaching into business, and he's known, you may not have heard of him because he's known mostly worldwide. I think it doesn't say here, but he's worked in 52 different countries, and the US he's not majoring. But he's Mexico and Eastern Europe and lots of other places. So just to show you that he nevertheless does do stuff in the US, here are some of the companies that he's worked with. Now, I know you're not a Fortune 100 company. You're a nonprofit, but that's our job, translating his stuff into your stuff. Here's the map. We're starting at the bottom right-hand corner, producer, and then moving over to administrator, entrepreneur, and integrator. That's what PAEI stands for. Now, these are people types, and they're also, as I said, about processes, structures. So we're going to start with the easy one, which is people. So let's look at who a producer would be. You probably have some in your department. You may be one. And just remember that nobody is a single letter, just a P, or just an A, or just an E, or just an I. We're all mixes. We have everything in it, but we have a dominant go-to characteristic. I myself am an E. I believe Shira is a P. She has a phenomenal ability to produce things and to get things done. And what would take me half an hour, she completes in about 3 minutes. So there you go. Everybody's got their different thing. And so just remember that as we go through it. Here we are. Producer. Who is a producer? A producer is somebody who has a checklist in mind. They come into work early. They have all these, well, they used to have papers on their desk. Now they have all these to-dos on their computer. And it's about, they feel successful when they have checked off the to-dos and they've done stuff. And they're hardworking. They come in early, not only, but they leave late usually. Sometimes they're a bit stressed, sometimes, but they're very focused. Their emails can be really short. And they expect you to talk to them in a way that, please get to the bottom line now. Because they're about getting things done. Now, nobody's just a P, like I said, and I want to remind you of that. But some people definitely have that as a dominant style. Okay, there they are. The good part about it is that they're the ones who create the actual value for PHF in your case, right? So everything that the agencies get is something that you produced, right? Train is something that people produced and then gives value outside of PHF. So without producers, things would slow down. You wouldn't create as much value. But the downside is producers think in terms of today. It's kind of this blinder syndrome. Like, got to get this done, got to get this done, got to get this done. So their interactions may be short, as I mentioned, and like they probably hate meetings. What a waste of time. And not only that, but they're not really necessarily thinking about the needs of other people. Now that can be incorporated, it can be learned. We're not just whatever style we might test out at, right? But we develop. And so each person, as they work on a different letter or a task, really, that's characterized by being something easy for somebody who's let's say, an A or an E, they develop themselves, right? So they broaden and balance. And generally, the older you get, the more large letters you might have. If one of your keys is, let me develop myself, round myself out. Enough of that. They ask the question, what? What is their question? What to do? Tell me what to do, and I will do it. Pretty simple. We got it. We're on it. We go. Now, that's great as long as you don't really have to do a lot of planning. Like a P is not the big element in strategic planning, for instance, or even in action planning. But we'll get to that at the end. All right. Next kind of workplace style is administrator, because after all, the P, focusing so much on themselves, is going to reinvent the wheel because they haven't talked to other people. They don't necessarily delegate what they should because they say, oh, I can do it better. I can do it faster. It's faster than teaching somebody else, right? But the A has a completely different mindset. The administrator says, listen, don't do it unless you have to do it. And the administrator is going to say, what is the most efficient way we can do this? Because administrators love efficiency. Efficiency is great. It prevents other people from reinventing the wheel. It's their contribution to the efficiency of other people. So they evaluate, they design a process, they develop a process, then things get going, and then they analyze the results, and they evaluate the results, and they maybe tweak the design a little. And whether that's a form that they want people to fill out, or a whole big process like the action planning that we're doing, the administrator role is what sits back, takes the time, and say, what is the most efficient way to do this? Because this is not a today to tomorrow task. So, or we're going to be doing this a whole lot, repeating it. Their main question is, how? How do we do it? What's the best way? So we have the what and the how in two different personalities. Okay. But think about it. The producer and the administrator are both relatively focused on what is going on. The administrator admittedly wants to know how to do what we're doing, but they're not out of the box coming up with new things. Now, as your organization changes internally, and as your the agencies change, the competitors change, the landscape changes around you, if all you have is producers and administrators, you're going to be doing a lot, and you're going to be doing it efficiently, and it's going to end up being eventually the wrong thing, and you're not going to be as relevant as you once were, and you're not going to get the grants that you once got, or the corporate sponsorships, or whatever it is you're going for, because you're not relevant. So you need a different style to keep you relevant, and that is the entrepreneur. Here we are with E. Entrepreneur is always looking outwards, looking at the environment. What's changing? What's going to be needed 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What's going to be needed? And who's going to be needed? Who should I be contacting with? And what's out there that will keep us on the edge? Because if we can't stagnate, an entrepreneur just does not stagnate. You've heard the term serial entrepreneur, right? You've never heard the term serial administrator, right? An administrator goes slowly and methodically. An entrepreneur goes quickly and in an unstructured way. What to other people would seem unstructured. There's an internal structure that a person has, an entrepreneur has, and that's looking outwards for what changes and how am I relevant. They're always messing things up because, in their motto down here, it says, do it unless it is proscribed, right? Like, just ask forgiveness later, because you got to get the results in an environment that's changing. So they're the big picture thinker, and they're the out of the box thinker. And without them, you would get stuck and become irrelevant. So how do they do it? They're asking 2 questions. They ask the big question. The real focus is why. Why is our client doing things the way they are? Why is our client not using more of our services? Why are we organized the way we are? Why is Capitol Hill debating about this? And they try to get underneath, and thereby, from understanding why, create a new something in the organization to respond to the need that other people don't even see as happening yet. Okay, so that's why it's also the time element, because they're ahead of the time. And sometimes when you work with E's, you have to bring them back to the organizational reality of detail, which E's hate, just hate detail. They're big picture thinkers. And that will get them into a useful when. But it's a nice balance, because who's to say if when should be now? Because if you're not an E, you're not seeing the need that's being created. So it's a balance. Teams are so fun. But you can notice that there's going to be conflict here between the E and the A, for instance, because if an E comes up with something new to do, the process that A created, it's going to be messed up or irrelevant. They're going to have to create a new process or try to tweak it, and meanwhile, the producer is just like, just put it on my desk and I'll do it. So that's fine, but it's unbalanced. There's tension between the E and the A. So we need one more element, and that's the I, the integrator, because the integrator really cares about making sure that everybody's together. Well, everybody's rowing in the same direction. Everybody understands the thing. An integrator is concerned about communication, making sure that everybody's on the same page. They really don't care about the particular direction as much as, are we going there together? So if you could imagine, let's say, a meeting, and in a meeting, if an E is leading a meeting, they're probably going to be talking about the latest, greatest thing that needs to happen, and maybe a couple of other projects that they really love. Is there an agenda that the E creates? Nah. Too much. That's too much administrative detail. Now, let's say an administrator is in charge of a meeting. Is there an agenda? Oh, for sure. And you get it a week early. You might even have to respond or put stuff up into a, like, I'm thinking Blackboard because I just thought academia, but onto a platform where everybody can see it and comment on it. So in the meeting, you just have a discussion about the things that need to be discussed. Otherwise, you can have a consent agenda where, we consent to this, to all this, and this. We just don't consent to this and this. And so you only talk about this and this in the meetings. Very organized, right? If an I is heading a meeting, it's going to be the funnest meeting. They will bring donuts. They'll bring coffee. How's the wife? How's the kids? What are things going on? Oh, okay. Now, how's the project? And they're going to be thinking about who is being included in the project, who's not going to be included, what the effects are of the way the project is being done on internal and external clients, right? So there's going to be a lot of discussion, not necessarily a lot of forward movement, but they're taking care of things in the long run. They're taking care of the people aspect in the long run. If a P leads a meeting, it is going to be, you might get an agenda, you'll probably get an agenda, and it'll be sitting on the desk waiting for you because they just finished creating it 5 minutes before the meeting. And you will go through it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There won't be time for questions. There'll be time for 3 questions, and people can get a little bit frustrated, and you wonder, why am I going to a meeting like this? This could have been done more efficiently. I didn't need to hear about everybody, or you might be excited by it, depending on the culture of the organization. Now, I just told you a lot about PAEI in terms of personalities, right? So, of course, let me just round it off and finish it and say the question for I is who. So they're obviously always thinking about who's. Now, you'll see how the P what, A how, E why, and also when, and I who show up later in the action planning. But I'm just going over this briefly, broad view right now. So now that you've seen it in people, getting kind of the difference, tensions, I'm going to show you the model. And there it is. And it can be a little bit confusing. So you notice there are 2 x-axes, 2 y-axes. So I'm going to go through it one by one. First, the x-axis. Now, if my focus is on results, do I move slow or fast? I move fast. There's no problem. There's nothing in the way. I see the results. I might cut corners. Do I care about processes? No, I care about results. Let's say PHF is going to do a marketing campaign that's part of the strategic plan. So marketing campaign can either be thought out in big style and have a whole lot of results to get, and they'll follow a process, and it's a little more complicated. Or, as you know, marketing can just be, we're going to market this project, or we're going to market this, let's say we're going to market train, or we're going to market one aspect of train. So we want results quickly, right? So maybe you'll have a meeting about it, maybe you'll have 2 meetings about it, and away you go. So that's focus on results. But if the marketing has to wants to market, train at the federal level, the state level, the county level, the local level, in various different aspects of it, to the learners even, well, hold on, your focus has to be on a process, right? And so now you're going to slow down. Your pace is going to slow down. So your pace is determined by what you're focused on, results or process. Now, move on to the y-axis. And what we have is approach and perspective. Let's start with perspective. If my perspective is local, meaning I have a very specified, narrow task to do. Let's say I'm in charge of putting paper in the Xerox machine. We don't say Xerox, in the copy machine. I don't even know if we have copy machines anymore. I don't even know if you use paper. But anyway, let's just say, you can tell I'm showing my age, right? So let's just say that's my job, making sure that the copy machine always has paper. So I'm going to have a structured process for that at 3 o'clock every day. Or better yet, I'm going to program the copier to send me an email when you're down to 100 sheets of paper. I throw in another ream, we're done. See, very simple, local, can keep it structured. Now, when you're up at the global level, you're dealing, the higher up you go in your, certainly in your job level, but also the higher up you go in the number of people you deal with in a project, the more variables there are. So you need to keep everything together. You need to be a bit unstructured, which is another way of saying you need to be a bit flexible, because you can't control everything. It's not just you picking up the phone or you adding another ream of paper to the machine. There's, at the global thinking level, there are questions galore, which you were dealing with in the strategic plan. So this is, the action plan is a bit stepped down from the strategic plan. So we're looking for more structure, right? We're taking the structure that you created from the global thinking and starting one level down, and we're going to take a lot of different stuff and structure it. Okay, putting it all together, here it is. And now I'm going to put the P, the A, the E, the I in there in the quadrants, which you can probably already imagine. The producer thinks locally, remember the stack of papers on the person's desk, and moves quickly. And I will relate this to, what do you have to do in action planning? How do you have to think with PAEI? Right now, I'm just staying at the conceptual model level. The administrator needs to think slowly in order to create structure out of a number of local details. What is the best way of doing X? Well, here are all the variables. How do we put them together the best? Okay. The I deals with a lot of variables, meaning a lot of different people. And with people, you have interests, you have styles, you have experience, you have knowledge, you have communication ability, you have whether they work remote or they're in the office. And so the integrator is dealing with an unstructured situation. And they develop a process, they develop an approach. It's not, an integrator salesman works very differently, for instance, than a producer salesman. Producer salesman focused on closing. Integrator salesman is more of a business development person focusing on, let's create long-term relationships that are going to benefit us. And of course, the entrepreneur thinks globally about results, but in an unstructured way, because there are so many details to deal with that are disparate, that don't necessarily fit together. And the reason you have all this together is so as a whole, you can operate in the short term, producer administrator, and in the long term, entrepreneur and integrator. and you can work efficiently. That's administrator for, products and process, and integrator for people processes, people efficiency, right? And you can work effectively, which is the producer at the local level and the entrepreneur making sure we're doing the right what at the right time, fitting it into what's going on outside. Now, whoa, like I said, there's no quiz on Friday. Okay, you don't have to memorize this. Shira and I will be talking to you about it. Certainly, as soon as we talk to you, you can ask us questions about this. But the real basic question for right now is, what does it mean for you during the action planning process? So I'm going to give you a very high level, very brief, you'll get more detail when we talk to you. We'll actually go over it in much more detail. But here's the action planning process to begin with. It's made up of 6 steps. The first step is setting foundations, which is really learning. We're learning from you, you're learning from us. We're setting the nomenclature together. We're setting the process so that we're in sync. And then during step 1, you're also going to get your team to brainstorm actions that would roll up to strategies. So there's brainstorming happening. Okay, nothing paring it down, just brilliant brainstorming. Step 2, you have to pare it down. And we have a process that will give you, use it, don't use it, use your own process, that's cool. I mean, I'm saying that's cool. I don't know, that might change. I said that without asking Sue or Mike or Ron. But anyway, we have a process that will show you through. We have spreadsheet. We can make custom templates for you if you want. But basically, step 2 is paring down those action steps that you brainstormed. And we say using the 5 W's. That's how, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why. Those are really the 5 W's, but also how, where people don't think about as much. So it's really 6 W's. A lot to do. Step 3, once you've gotten your action steps, then you're going to get together, we're going to get together in a meeting, and all day, it's going to take all day to bring the global down to the local, the unstructured down to the structured. Because in step 2, we have a lot of action steps, but they're not organized necessarily in the best way. So that's what step 3 is about, setting priorities for the strategies, which can only really be done once you know what we can do, the action steps, and take into account financing of the whole thing. That's why we need prioritization too, and agree on action step guidelines. So to further pare down the action steps and decide which ones are the right ones, we set up guidelines. What is the best action step for this strategy? Well, not dealing with what you came up with, but it would have these characteristics, A, B, C. Okay, that's step 3. I believe it's happening in person. And once we get that, then we'll take that back and create the action plan itself. So we, meaning Shira and me, PH is Purposeful Hire, Shira's company, RR Reframed Reality, my consultancy. So creating an action plan, putting it in a form, and we're going to ask you about what form is best for you. There's going to be a lot of participation here. And then we give you the action plan, and you say, oh yeah, but we should change this and change that. And then you finalize the action plan that's going to fulfill the strategies, that'll fulfill the goals, that'll fulfill the pillars or strategic priorities for the strategic plan. But actually, you haven't done anything except for think and create. Right now, you need the last step, step 6. Implement the action plan. You have to do the stuff. We'll be with you there too for the first few months. So PAI is going to help during all of this. How? Here we go. Let's take it from step 1. during step one, the key is brainstorming, right? So think about a brainstorming session. Which one, P, A, E, or I, you do is going to affect the outcome. If you're a P, you'll be like, you'll be moving it as fast as possible, and you will be cutting down the number of ideas you get. You'll get the minimum number of ideas. Fine, that sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good. Good. We're done. Now on to the next strategy. Good, 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 good. We're done. So what we recommend is think E, big entrepreneur. That's the real mode that you and the group need to be in. PAE for just letting every brainstorm thing come up, not cutting anything down, just I mean, if somebody says, we need to call President Biden 3 times a day for this thing, then you're like, wow, that's interesting. Okay, write it down. You do not cut anybody off. You get the entrepreneurial spirit going. And you also, though, pay attention to the people, the quiet ones who don't say ideas until they know it's safe, until they've heard what other people have to say. Make sure they say things, bring them out. The loud ones who tend to dominate, make sure they, push them back a little, either during a meeting or beforehand. Go ahead, and talk to them. I'm not going to give too much detailed advice. Right now, we're talking about PAEI. So the big one for step one is you're going to have your EI hat on. Step two, when you need to narrow things down, is entrepreneur going to be the greatest thing? No, not at all. You're now moving into the land of structure. And it's not that you don't need it, because you still need to think of the big picture. But when you want to present your action steps forward, you don't want to present the 50 action steps that people came up with. You want to present something more reasonable. And you're going to decide, or we're going to decide together, what is more reasonable. The way we do that is by applying structure. So we have our administrative hat on, and by considering people, right? So step two is going to be slow. Step one will have its fast elements because E works fast. It's exciting. And it also will have its careful elements of people care, which slows things down a little bit, but is really important, obviously, so that everybody is going to be willing to implement and do the stuff that they brainstormed. And that's also why we have the I, the integrator, over here in paring down, because we're always thinking about what's going to make this the most implementable. Step three, that day when we're together, that is going to need a lot. So we have here a small p, big administrator, big entrepreneur, and big integrator. Because again, we're going to take a global set of actions and a global set of strategies. We're going to prioritize strategies, which is A, right? And the global part is E. And we're going to make sure that we have the people to do it, and we're not assigning everything to the same person. We're going to think about how people are going to react, how people are going to work together. So keep your administrator, entrepreneur, and integrator hat going, and we're going to help you do that there. All right, and creating an action plan, of course, that's back to us. And it's very narrow, right? It's local. You create an action plan out of everything all the information that you've prioritized and agreed on, action steps. So it's mostly given to us. So the big function there is administrative, and maybe I should have put a big P there too, just get it done, right? And we're going to then feed it back to you. And when we do, you're just going to get this done. So it's definitely a big P there. It's like, this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed. Talk back and forth a little. Okay, check, done. Let's go to implementation. So what does implementation take? What kind of hats does implementation have? You've already created processes. You may need to create more, so it will take some A. You've already thought out what's the big point. So we've mostly taken care of B, though you may need to get creative in implementing a little bit. So there's some E. but really it's big P, big I. Get it done, get it done, get it done according to plan. And we know why, because that's the E part, right? We're always looking at, I know why I'm doing this. And so I have the motivation. And I also think I'm people inclusive, right? I'm also thinking about the needs of other people as I do this. There you go. Those are the basics. If your head is spinning around once or twice or three times, don't worry. Just go take a good walk or have a nice cup of tea and not, or watch it again if that's what you want to do. And we will talk to you more about this along the way. Thank you. It's been a great pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you.